For a huge chunk of the season, it looked as though the Chicago Bulls were focused on trading Zach LaVine. The Bulls kickstarted their rebuild by swapping Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey. The NBA offseason is officially underway, and there's plenty of trade activity still to come and the ensuing start of free agency. The Bulls had been communicating with rival teams a desire to reshape their roster. Bulls front office indeed struck a deal that brings the first player back to Chicago via trade in 3 years. Word of the Bulls' interest in Giddey had filtered to opposing front offices. Although many executives from opposing teams believed there was a potential construct for a Patrick Williams sign-in trade. The fourth-year forward is now a restricted free agent, with OKC, Raptors and Hornets already being mentioned as possible landing spots for Williams outside of Chicago. The deal resulted in a direct flip of Giddey for Caruso. Caruso, who's on an expiring $9.9 million contract and will become eligible for a 4-year, roughly $80 million extension 6 months after the completion of this trade. OKC has made its first true win-now move that rival teams have been anticipating for some time, swapping one of the Thunder's prized lottery picks for a veteran who fits perfectly within OKC's 5-out scheme. Many league observers quickly compared this acquisition to that of Boston landing Derek White, a key building block toward the Celtics championship. The Bulls are making a significant investment in Giddey, not just for the payday their new 21-year-old playmaker will likely command after his rookie deal expires following the 2024-25 season, but in regard to the Caruso offer Chicago dismissed during previous transaction cycles. The Bulls engaged several teams over the past 18 months that were willing to sacrifice first-round draft capital for Caruso, while Chicago characteristically pushed for unprotected picks and as many as 4 first-rounders in some of those conversations. Chicago also refused to include Caruso in deals that would have offloaded Zach LaVine. The Bulls are clearly high on Giddey. He's been incredibly durable, compared to Caruso's own injury history, not to mention Lonzo Ball's years-long absence. There's certainly an argument to be made that a 3-year veteran who started for the top seed in the Western Conference still harbors untapped potential and eventually could be worth the draft ammunition spurned by the Bulls in Caruso offers. That answer, of course, won't be known for several seasons, which is much further in the future than Chicago's impending decision on Giddey by this time next summer. LaVine's time with the Bulls is all but over. They have been trying to find a willing trade partner for him since before the February 8th trade deadline. Dangling Alex Caruso as a potential makeweight in any trade was their best bet of getting a deal over the line. That option disappeared when the Bulls sent him to OKC. As such, the Bulls will likely struggle to find a team willing to absorb LaVine and his $215 million contract, which has 3 years remaining and the final year being a player option. LaVine struggled with a foot injury this season, making just 25 appearances for the Bulls. His injury history and his overpriced contract are 2 primary reasons why teams are likely reluctant to strike a deal for the ball-dominant scorer. LaVine would be an ideal second or third star on a contender team. Unfortunately, he's being paid like he's one of the best players in the NBA, and that's the primary issue for Chicago. Somewhere around the NBA, there will likely be a front office that believes it can get the best out of LaVine. It may see his contract as a potential trade chip for the future, especially if it can help him increase his trade value on the back of some stellar performances. However, the Bulls must accept that any potential return will likely fall short of their expectations. It's unlikely that Chicago will get a package of young prospects, draft picks, and salary filler for LaVine. His market isn't strong enough for that sort of deal. Instead, the Bulls may have to eat some bad contracts and accept mid-level draft picks to get the deal over the line. Chicago is likely entering a rebuild. It needs LaVine's contract off the books to add flexibility moving forward. There have been reports that the Sacramento Kings have emerged as the frontrunners to land LaVine. Sacramento is trying to add a third star next to De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, and LaVine is an obvious fit, at least on the offensive end. Defensively, it raises some questions, but the Kings have been more concerned about making the playoffs rather than going far there anyway. The Kings have some draft capital that they can send Chicago's way, but a LaVine trade will presumably not require much. Instead, They can send Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter to the Bulls. Huerter and Barnes don't have the highest upside, but they are solid role players. Huerter is still 25 and is a very good shooter. Barnes is a two-way forward that the Bulls need. Once again, the Bulls don't get the young players or draft assets that they would prefer. This means that the Bulls get two tradable players on more manageable contracts. Barnes making $18 million and Huerter making $16.8 million for next season is much better for Chicago's books than LaVine's massive contract. The Bulls can use Barnes and Huerter and move them for positive value. Another possible landing spot for LaVine if the Bulls trade him is the Orlando Magic. The Magic could easily justify a patient, measured build with the young core that they already have in place. The Magic just lost a tough 7-game series to the Cavaliers and will look to bolster their young roster this offseason. Their biggest need is three-point shooting, and the Magic do have enough cap space to take on a bigger contract. They also have a logjam of big men to deal from and could move either Wendell Carter Jr. or Jonathan Isaac. The Bulls could certainly use Carter Jr., but given LaVine's injury history, Chicago may have to attach another asset. The Magic are going to be after any shooter on the market, and some kind of deal involving LaVine could be possible. They finished top 5 on defense this season despite having the 4th youngest roster in the league. Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs are already plus defenders, and Paolo Banchero certainly has the potential to get there as well. If any team might be able to cover for some of LaVine's defensive deficiencies, it's probably one with the length, athleticism, and switchability. Orlando could just bank on internal growth and add low-usage role players to foster that development. The Magic also have a bottom 10 offense and could use some potential cap space to absorb some of LaVine's salary before the second contracts of Wagner and Banchero kick in. Another team that has significant cap space and could use the skill set LaVine brings is the Detroit Pistons. After winning just under 20 games in consecutive seasons, the Pistons are in desperate need to take a step forward. They have some young and promising talents, but they don't have enough quality veterans. LaVine could fill that need. The Bulls would get an intriguing young player in Isaiah Stewart. The 23-year-old can play both big positions, can shoot, rebound, and provides physicality. He signed a 4-year, $60 million extension with the Pistons, and with the rising salary cap, that will likely look team-friendly in a few years. None of these trades are very inspiring, but this is LaVine's trade value right now. The Bulls can't expect much of a return for LaVine, but that almost doesn't matter. Getting out from under his colossal contract would make it easier for this front office to navigate. It's hard to imagine the Bulls doing much better than any of these 3 deals. At this point, any trade that gets the Bulls a positive return would be a good one for Chicago. Not to mention, subtracting him from the team would ensure the runway stays clear for Kobe White's continued ascension.